This past week, both Zillow and Redfin had the balls to do what the National Association of Realtors did not. They took a definitive stand against Compass and they made it very clear to sellers that if you decide to list your home on a private network like Compass's, well, your house will never show up on Zillow or Redfin, which is a big deal because those are two of the largest consumer-facing sites. They are the places where most home buyers find their homes online. So this statement has massive consequences. They are going toe-to-toe with Compass, one of the biggest brokerages in the United States. It is fascinating to see. Now, you as a consumer, a home buyer, you may be wondering, what in the world does this mean for me? You might see terms like clear cooperation flying around, and it all just kind of gets lost in industry jargon. And that's why I wanted to create this episode, to just really lay it out. What is the issue? What are the changes? What's happening? What does it mean for you? So that's what we're going to cover today. My name is Nick. You are listening to or watching the DIY Homebuyer podcast. Ultimately, I am all about empowering and educating homebuyers so that you can purchase your next home without hiring a costly buyer's agent and ideally save yourself that 3% commission, which is a huge chunk of change. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the show. If you know of somebody who's shopping for a home, share this episode with them. And if you really like what you're hearing, leave me a comment or a review. All of those things are immensely encouraging and helpful to me. But let's go ahead and dive in. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of backstory on, okay, why am I saying that Zillow had balls this last week? What does that even mean? And so we got to reverse back to, okay, who is Compass and what is it that they were trying to do that Zillow finally stood up to them in, whereas the National Association of Realtors did what the National Association of Realtors always does, and they spread their butt cheeks wide and are just trying to ride the fence. Okay. Compass is a brokerage, much like a Remax or Keller Williams, but Compass is kind of one of the newer players. However, they have had just like meteoric rise in success, although meteors fall, don't they? Whatever the analogy is that I'm going for there, you can fill it in. The idea is that Compass has had crazy success, and under their leadership, Robert Refkin, they have been advocating for having a private network for their listings. And the pitch behind this is that it would give home sellers more flexibility. They say that home sellers having to list on the MLS, which is the traditional way that home sellers get their houses out in front of as many buyers as possible. Compass says that, well, that actually can harm home buyers in a number of ways, because as soon as that listing goes live, you start to see how many days it sat on market. The MLS always shows whenever there's a price reduction. And Compass's argument was that, hey, if we bring this all in-house, we don't have to show that kind of data. We don't have to record days on market or price drops, and therefore it could be better for sellers. So they've made this whole sales pitch, and in just a few short months, the latest numbers were that Compass had over 22,000 listings that were on their private network. Now, here's the other side to a private network. It is inherently private, which means that to see the homes that are on Compass's private network, you have to be working with a Compass agent. So even if you are working with a Keller Williams agent, the Keller Williams agent isn't going to know about Compass's own private exclusive listings. And especially for my audience, you as a self-represented home buyer, well, you're not going to know what Compass has listed on their private network either. You'd have to work with a Compass agent to find those things. And this makes it very clear why Compass wants to have their own private network of listings, because it means that you will be working with a Compass agent. And if Compass agents are on both the seller side and the buyer side, well, that doubles the amount of money that the brokerage is making. It also brings everything in-house, their own little ecosystem. It gives them far greater control. I've looked at some of these listing agreements and buyer agency agreements. They're chock full of junk fees fees, like a $900 administration fee, instead of having a blank where buyers and agents or sellers and agents negotiate the commission. There's just bubbles to circle if it's 3.5, or 4% commissions. I mean, the way that they have this thing structured is so anti-consumer. It causes my stomach to turn. Like, I absolutely hate it. They're my cards on the table right there. But here's the thing. Compass has been running with this private network of listings. They've seen growth. Having 22,000 listings in just a few short months is nothing to joke about. Like, those are some serious numbers. And then they have this battle with the National Association of Realtors because NAR has a policy called clear cooperation. And clear cooperation requires that all real estate agents post their listings publicly on the MLS for all realtors everywhere to see within 24 hours of that property being publicly marketed. And clear cooperation policy was created to prevent brokers, specifically individual agents, from having what we've referred to as pocket listings. Pocket listing is where an agent knows of, somebody wants to sell their house, but rather than put it on the market, I'm just going to keep that one to myself, and I'll try and play matchmaker so that if I can find a buyer for it, I'll get to double end the deal, where I will get the commission, the full commission, for representing both the seller and the buyer. National Association of Realtors has frowned upon that for a number of reasons, some of them noble, like wanting to protect consumers, others of them not as noble. But in the end, I think that this whole clear cooperation policy is a good thing. Well, the Compass's goal of having private network listings was in clear contradiction to clear cooperation. And so things were headed towards a real lawsuit. And Compass was actually saying that it was wrong of NAR to enforce clear cooperation policy, that they were restricting sellers of their right to do what they want to do with their property. And NAR, who doesn't want to be sued again, they were like, okay, we'll just find some sort of a happy medium where we'll allow for brokerages to do their own private network listings for 2 weeks, and then they can put it on the MLS. And after NAR came out with their revised clear cooperation policy, that's where Zillow finally took a clear stand. And they just said, you know what? If you want to put your home on a private network listing like Compass's, fine. It's your choice. But when you fail to sell your home on that private network listing, like 94% of all homes that go onto a private network fail to sell on that private network. So if you're one of those 94% that fail to find a buyer, well, you're going to be straight out of luck when it comes to listing your home publicly, at least if you want to be found on Zillow. And Zillow, like it or not, is the number one place that home buyers go when they are shopping for houses, whether that's casual or serious buyers. I mean, even buyers who are working with agents. Like, yes, every agent in brokerage has their own website where you can look up listings, but let's be real. Like, when I was working as a more traditional buyer's agent, like, my clients would send me links to homes on Zillow or Redfin, not from my website or my brokerage's website. Zillow and Redfin are the two places where home buyers are going to set up their searches and to find homes. So it is a big, big deal for Zillow to tell home sellers that if you try to go private, you will not ever be featured on Zillow, which means that you will miss out on the biggest pool of buyers that there is. Those are massive, massive consequences. And I think that what Zillow and Redfin are saying here is a win for consumers. Now, of course, Zillow and Redfin, they are taking this stand not because they are like the bastions of consumer equality and fairness, and because they're just these wonderful corporations that mean well and are entirely altruistic. That is not the case at all. They are taking the stand 100% because it is motivated by profit for them. Like for both Zillow and Redfin, sure, there's some little differences in their model, but the primary ways that they are monetized is by you as a home buyer popping onto their website, putting in your information, and then either clicking the request a tour button where you then get paired up with a agent through the Zillow or Redfin platform. And Zillow then takes a massive, massive cut. Not only do they charge the agent for your information as a lead, but then if you buy a home with that agent, Zillow will take up to 40% of the commission that the agent receives simply for connecting the two of you. And then, of course, Zillow and Redfin, especially with Redfin having recently bought by Rocket, like they also want for you to use their home loan services and whatever other integrations they have. So the idea for Zillow and Redfin that there would be some listings that don't show up on their site, well, that's bad for business. That means that there's less opportunity for them to capture your information and sell it to another agent. So let's be candid. Like, yes, they're motivated by profit, but there are two things that can be true at the same time. And even though they are selfishly motivated in making these moves, it is still in the best interest of all consumers, but especially home buyers, that you're able to see every available listing on the market. Like private network listings are not good for consumers. So if you have to choose between the two evils of Zillow making this move that's driven by profit, or Compass, they're also making their moves based upon profit. They want private network listings because that's better for their bottom line. Well, between those two evils, the evil of Zillow is lesser than Compass saying that, like, the only way to play with us is by having a Compass agent and paying our ridiculous fees. Apart from that, you are being completely gatekept from our little bubble of exclusive listings. And as a home seller, I don't know why you would ever. Uh, I'll come back to this, but in general, like in 99.9% of cases, I don't know why you would ever want to have your home in a smaller bubble with a smaller pool of potential buyers. Like, I get it that you don't want to see accumulating days on market. I get that you might want to test the market at a higher price and not be penalized by it showing up that you've done price reductions. I understand those things, but when we're talking about Zillow has like a monthly, it's ridiculous. It's larger than the population of the United States, but there is like over 340 million users every month that come to Zillow. And Compass has, I mean, we're talking like a less than 1% of that kind of web traffic on their site. So the difference in visibility of listings between if you're privately listed on Compass versus if you're publicly listed on Zillow is, it's like comparing, planet Earth to the sun. Like they're just unfathomably more visibility on Zillow than there is on Compass. And so as a seller, like if you are trying to think that, like, yeah, I've got better chances getting the best terms, highest possible price for my home with a smaller pool of buyers, I mean, you're out to lunch. Like, you have truly just been drinking the Compass Kool-Aid for far too long. And any Compass agent that tries to tell you that, like, I would fact check them right away. Ask them to show you the data and the statistics, because again, it is 94% of all listings that go onto the private network of listings, they end up having to go public anyway because they don't successfully find a buyer. So in my mind, it's like, well, then you might as well just go to market right away and have the biggest pool of buyers out there. So as a home seller, I don't understand why you would want to be on a private network unless you are Luka Doncic, the NBA player that got traded from the Dallas Mavericks to LA Lakers, like right after he bought a $10 million property in Dallas. Like maybe if you're Luka Doncic, you might want to have your home on a private network instead of having it publicly hosted on Zillow, because the pool of buyers for your $10 million property is so small already. And maybe the privacy concerns are great enough for you that it's like, yeah, I'm just not going to bother with having my house on Zillow. But that is not like, it's just not most people's reality. And so, Luca, if you're listening to this podcast, one, go Lakers in the playoffs coming up here. Also, you do what you want with your house. But for the rest of us, it's like, I want as many eyeballs as possible on my home when I'm selling, because the more eyeballs that I get, the more attention and buzz there is around my home. That should lead to more tours, higher attendance at open houses. That should lead to more offers. And the more offers that I have, the better price, the better terms, just all around, the better sale I'm going to have. So it is in consumers, sellers especially, their best interest that their house shows up on Zillow. And it is a good thing for Zillow and Redfin to just make it clear, so that there's just no ambiguity about the fact that if you decide to work with Compass and do their private network listing, Zillow, Redfin, not an option for you. You're not going to show up there. From a homebuyer perspective, this is a huge deal because, as I alluded to earlier, you want to see every home that's out there. And Zillow and Redfin are rich with data. And frankly, they're able to provide better data the more listings there are that are out there, because they compile all of that stuff. And so as they're looking at what has been on the market, how long it's been on the market, how long until it went pending, what did it ultimately close for, they're able to then take all of that data and summarize it for you in your particular zip codes or the neighborhoods that you as a home buyer are looking in. The more data they have, the better their estimates are, and the better informed you are when it comes to making a home buyer decision. So as a home buyer, and somebody who advocates for self-represented buyers especially, I absolutely hate the idea of private network listings, because as a home buyer, it forces you to work with these brokerages and their agents. And it also limits the kind of data and access that you have to homes on these public facing platforms like Zillow and Redfin. Now, as a home buyer, and I've talked about this elsewhere, but you should be aware when you pop onto Zillow.com, you are the product, not the customer. Like, Zillow does want to get your information and sell you to the highest bidding agent, and they can sell you for a lot of money. But as long as you don't give them your information or ever click that request a tour button, they don't get a dime from you. And all of the search that you have and all of the data and everything available to you on their platform truly is like a free service. And yeah, they charge exorbitant fees to realtors for referrals because it's such a small percentage of Zillow users that actually convert and work with like a Zillow Premier agent, that they have to have those fees so high in order to pay for all of us that freeload off of their website. Will that model change in the future? I don't know. That's beyond the scope of this video. But I am saying it is fair to assume that as long as you're not giving your information to these platforms, beyond setting up a basic account, as long as you're not requesting services from them, for all intents and purposes, the services that you're using on their site to do your research as a home buyer is completely free. I actually think that is very, very cool. The way that Zillow and Redfin work, like the reason that all listings show up there is because they have data feeds direct from every MLS in the United States. So that's why it is also so important for them that clear cooperation policy remain intact, because that requirement that agents list every property within 24 hours of it being publicly available ensures that Zillow and Redfin do have those listings, boom, right away. And if brokers and agents find ways to skirt around those rules, then that means, again, the amount of homes that Zillow and Redfin have to market to home buyers like you is fewer, and that hurts their business. So I can see why they would take a stand in support of clear cooperation policy. And as I've talked about in other places, clear cooperation policy is, I think, one of the few things that NAR has done that ultimately does benefit consumers.